Can I have them stand, please? I think it's important. Right on. So are they sitting at the same tables? No, maybe we should try and move around these auditors. Because you know why? The auditors are here out of the generous nature that they have and the wonderful personalities, so we could circulate these personalities. Besides, they're not charging, right? Right? So if we move around, we can talk to people, and the whole deal today is to share knowledge. It always is. You can have a seat now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen and auditors. It's great to have you here, seriously. So as I said, the main purpose of today is to communicate that exciting audit process time. Now, the very fact you're here, I'm very impressed. This time of the year, great. Because what you're doing in your finance departments, you're keeping all your operations going. So our role today is to try to help you with that, to make things a little easier, a little bit more organized, and allow you to do what? Delegate. Okay? Can everyone say that together? Delegate. See, auditors know that, okay? And they can share that with you because they know how to delegate. Because our whole role as auditors, we come in, we tick and we check, et cetera, et cetera. But what we want to do is we want to instill a little bit more organization in your operation so you can talk and communicate more with your auditors. Why? They're intelligent people. They're outgoing, believe it or not, okay? And you have a lot to learn from them. Plus, they can do other things besides ticking and checking, et cetera, et cetera. You want to use their brain power to help your organization, right? And the main purpose of today with the communication, help you get organized in the audit process is what? Is to get you out and have holidays when everyone else has holidays. Because come July, we're usually hung up putting things together in your organizations, looking after all those instant requests. I need it by tomorrow. I need it by today. Oh, do you have a minute? Okay. You've all gone through that. So this is what we're trying to do, is to help you out with that process. So, again, communication is so important. I'm Norm Gradina. I'm an accountant. I'm an auditor. I'm a certified fraud examiner and a private investigator. And hopefully you don't have to use any of those skills today, but it's very important just to let you know what I do. And I'm also in public practice with the firm of RHN CPAs, and we're accountants and auditors, and we do all this kind of stuff as well, okay? Now, our past presenters, Suki, who's done a lot of the presentations throughout the province and has helped over the last 2 or 3 years, and Clay Harmon, other presenters. Now, as auditors, and we're all auditors, all three of us, okay, over time, what we did is we tried to, in terms of making this information and assemble this information readable and usable. So we used to have, little devices that we passed out. We had a big binder at one time. We thought, well, assemble all your information in these binders, non-electronic. Then we stepped it up a bit. But to tell a story which is really important to me, and it's really helped my life as an auditor, get this scenario. I'm sitting in a band council meeting, okay? And wonderful Chief Clint Williams says to me, and you may know him, says to me, you know, Norm, sometimes we just don't understand you. I say, what do you mean you don't understand me? You know, we're making it simple, really simple, everything we do as auditors. Sometimes auditors, people don't understand us. Now, from the finance group, a lot of you that are in from finance, and obviously Aboriginal Financial Officers Association, you're thinking back, wait a minute, we want to help with the communication of financing. So what did Chief Clint tell me to do? Norm, the first thing you got to do, please help us out here. You got to de-geek what you're saying. So I sit back and think, what the heck's he talking about? I thought I did de-geek it. So de-geeking from our perspective as auditors, and maybe yours from a financial perspective, is not really de-geeking at all. Okay? So we have to step it up. So he says to me, we're going to have a signal. That means de-geek whatever you're saying. Bring it down to a different level or bring it up. Often it was down rather than up, okay? Then we went into the second line of communication, which I thought was very important, and I use it today, is the left hand. And what the left hand means is Norm, for God's sake, sit down and give us time to absorb it. So if we go through this session today and I see the left hand, I have to sit back and try to come up with another way of explaining the information. Now, after all of this, the three people I've talked about, including myself, we put all this together, think this is cool, we've got all kinds of handout materials, okay? And one of the participants a year ago said, you know, really, Norm, it's kind of good, but, you know, we need kind of more workable stuff. In other words, what is she telling me? What did she tell me specifically at an organization meeting such as this? And it was up in the Yukon, okay? It was de-geek it, okay? So what do? Look at it, we're all excited about the session this year, and then all of a sudden, we decided as an AFOA group, when I was away, I wasn't in these discussions, to de-geek it further. So what did? We brought Beverly in. Please, everybody turn and give Beverly a round of applause. You're asking why. Everything you're seeing today, we gave to Beverly and thinking, oh, we're okay. She's not going to come back with any changes. So what happened? In communication with ISK, okay, they decided, and I wasn't present, which is probably a good thing, decided that we need a guide. Why didn't I think of a guide? Why didn't Suki think of a guide? Why didn't Clay think of a guide? We didn't. Why? Because we're auditors. We didn't de-geek it. So Beverly, thank you for de-geeking, and everything you say today, including the guide, as well as the PowerPoint presentation, which I think is excellent, is due to Beverly sorting out all the stuff I gave to her in a disorganized fashion, and all the stuff that we've been developing over the years. So she brought all that USB key stuff that we had dumped into an organized fashion. And when I first looked at it, I thought, oh my God, this is pretty exciting. I'm getting excited. Now, it's really, really cool when auditors get excited about auditing, right? And auditings get excited about preparation, okay? But the key thing that we want today is to have some take-homes. A lot of take-homes. And those take-homes are what you can use on a day-to-day basis, which is really important. Checklist, okay? How many of you attended these conferences before? Okay, can I have you stand, please? Can I have you stand? Cool, so we have some, good. So we have some people that haven't attended, which is cool. So you should be sharing knowledge with these people, right? And you can sit down now. Okay? So you have to share knowledge. Now, as we go through the presentation, I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive this year than I have in other years and ask, what was your takeaway? Are you using what we're giving you? That's the key. So keep in the back of your mind, are you using what we are giving you? Because if you're using a checklist, if you're using Clay's notation, which we'll get into in one of the workout sessions and activity sessions, you will definitely be more organized. So what is our goal? As I talked about going around to the table, our goal today is to get you on holidays in July. And you're probably saying, damn, that's unheard of. No, it's not. We can work towards that goal. We have to have that long-range plan to get there. So what you have to do is what? Delegate, right? If you can delegate. You know, often you're stuck with, you're the only one in the department, changes coming up. Yeah, we're still going to help you to delegate. But it's really important. The audit process is not, and we get into the sessions earlier, and I'm getting just a précis right now, we get into the process of doing it all year long. Auditing does not start, and preparation does not start after the audit date of March 31st, 2020. It doesn't. It starts like right now, and it should have started probably 6 or 8 months ago in accumulating that information. What you want, again, is when your auditors come in, you want them to be smiling and thinking, wow, this is cool. You've given us all our information. Then you really have to tax their brain and figure out how else we can use them. Okay? That's really, really important. Alrighty? So, that's basically the welcome and the overview, I think. Any comments at this stage? Okay? Any comments of what you want to get out of today? Any comments related to the questionnaire? Okay? I did not do the questionnaire. I wouldn't have thought that far ahead. But that's another one of Beverly's ideas, and I think it's cool. It gets us thinking about, this is how we're starting the session, how are we going to finish? What are we going to take home with us to help us with our day-to-day operation? And coffee has come here. So should we take 1 minute break and go grab your coffee? Okay, and it might spruce us all up, right? So let's go grab our coffees. We'll just take a quick break. Okay, while you're getting your coffees, you can hear me, and just glance over to the screen where this is our agenda for the day. We've gone through the welcome and the overview of the day. We want to get into the audit process and the plan. And the plan that we're talking about is your plan in conjunction with the auditor's plan. Then we're going to move into the development of the audit plan as well for the same reason. Work into these areas that will help you. Then we'll have a refreshment break at 10:30 for sure, with coffee, okay, and other things. Then we're going to move into your audit at 10:45 to 12:30. Risk and controls, and workshop closing remarks. The key when we get into the risk and controls is some things that will really, really help you out, I think, as you push forward with the way funding is coming up in this day and age, okay? Because what we're talking about is risk, we're talking about internal controls, and I think it's quite important. So we'll get into a few examples there of the little activities that we got going. Whoop, you okay there? Good, super. Now, you talk about a dedicated person at this session. We all got a lot to learn from this lady here. She's got her ankle up in ice, and she was just dying to come here and learn about auditing, right? Good morning. How are you feeling?
I'd be better if I had water.
Oh, good. Can somebody bring her a glass of water? Super. Good to have you here. Isn't that dedication? But that's what we're all about as auditors and in the finance department, right? We're dedicated because we're used to dealing with other people's problems and resolving them, right? But again, what do we have to do? Delegate, right? So now that you've got a sore ankle, you've got to delegate, right? Okay, good. So she's going to pick up a lot today, for sure. Just being here, right on. Super. Okay, let's move on. So the outcomes of today. Let me go back a moment here. When you talk about the slides, you read that? Okay. On you own. I never noticed that. Does that come up in your day-to-day operation when you read something and you don't de-geek it and understand what the heck you're talking about? I've gone over that and over that and over that and thinking, this morning, you stupid ass, look at that thing. You own. Now English is my first language. I don't have a second, but obviously I have trouble with the first. Okay? So it's your own, complete the self-assessments, etc. And then we have an icebreaker, and she's got her ice, which is cool. A little bit of play on words here. Yeah, right on. Okay? So, the agenda and moving on to the outcomes. 1, organize for a funding audit throughout the year. Okay? In other words, we want to make sure that we're putting everything together to make sure that we're funding the audit and making the information available throughout the year. Secondly, an outcome. Manage the audit process and work with your funding agents. Really important. Okay? They'll be here later, our funding agents. What's important to think about if our funding agents, and you heard, talk about this before, hey, they are our bankers. And you don't want to tick off our bankers, right? So you got to be kind of reasonable with them, within reason, etc. And they'll be here, and we'll be able to talk to them later about what's coming up with our funders. All right? Look upon them as our bankers. Understanding the audit responsibilities and duties and roles. This is really, really key. We'll go into what the auditors can and can't do. Okay? Particularly when you get into discussions like, hey, can you do a forensic report? We need a forensic report. We need someone to do this. You have to understand what that's all about. And we'll get into and touch that a little bit. Okay? 4, share smart practices and ideas on how to create an audit plan. This is your audit plan. And it entails working with your auditors. So this is where we want to share the knowledge with the auditors that are at the table to say, hey, what would you have done in this situation? Can you help us out? On a charge-free basis at this point. Isn't that cool? Sorry, I like to give the auditors a bad time because they always give me a bad time, and we have such a good relationship. Auditors are great people, right? Auditors are great people, right? Oh, don't make me go through what I did in Kamloops 2 years ago. I had all the auditors stand up, and at that point in time, just about every auditor in Kamloops and in the province was up there. I don't know why. So I had them all stand up, and there was about 20 or 30 of them. Little exaggeration, maybe 22 and a half, but at any rate. So I said to the auditors, please stand up. I had them close their eyes. I had them cross their arms, and they're wondering, what the heck are you doing, Norm? So I had everybody else say, now, your auditors are standing up. They're really important people. Can you all say, we love our auditors? Not one person said, we love our auditors. I think that was horrible. I said, you know, people are ticking me off. I've given up my time to be here to help you out, and you won't even say you love your auditors when you do so much work for you? So one lady in the back, and I've told this story, I think, last year, and you probably heard it. Lady in the back jumps up and says, yeah, but we like internal controls better. I said, you need a life, right? So that's basically where we're on the audit side. So please, can everybody today say, we love our auditors? Great, and particularly today because it's free. Yeah, so it's okay. Good. Then we move into reducing risk through internal controls. Okay? So the risk assessment process is what we're dealing with. And the reason why I want to bring up risk is to become really relevant in the 10-year funding process. Okay, really relevant. I am a director of the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association as well as the First Nation Financial Management Board. And I chair the committee, a wonderful committee, that certifies nations for 10-year funding. So we see everything in our certification process. So it's really important that this is a key element to help with internal control and look at a risk assessment. So we'll do a little sample in one of our activities later on, but I think it's very, very important to understand that whole process, okay? And where funding is going. Okay, we had that introduction and self-assessment. Did we all shake hands at the table? Can we all shake hands again? We did shake hands? Good. For the new people that came in, did we shake hands? And tradition with AFOA BC, we always hug once we know the person, right? So we always hug, so we can do that later already. Okay? And about your audit and the audit process. Okay? I have to kind of stay in one spot today. I can't get around to the tables because we're being video conferenced, etc., and it's on the web, so I have to stay in one spot. I like to move around. Okay, like all other auditors. We spend all of our time sitting on our butt. So it's really neat that we get a chance to walk around. So it's my big day today. I get a chance to walk around. Plus the fact, I'm leaving early because I'm going to Hawaii with our family. Our 7 grandchildren, 1 on the way, 4 kids and their spouses. So the first thing I'm going to do when I leave here is go to Home Depot to get some earplugs. Oh, vehicles to be moved and staff, no parking. CENT 865, 685, WRF, and FC5, 71C. Not bad, I don't have my reading glasses. So, Bev, thanks for making the print so big so I can read it. Oh, Jade, thanks, super. So, everybody get those license plate numbers? Go move your cars so we don't get told. If it's somebody else, that's okay. As long as, oh. You make me feel really good. I don't know my license plate number either. Good, here we go. So, tribal councils, First Nations must adhere to the Public Sector Accounting Handbook, accounting recommendations, unless they are deemed profit-oriented organizations or not-for-profit organizations or government not-for-profit organizations under the definition of CPA Canada Handbook. Okay? Now, you may be seeing changes coming up in terms of how First Nations are going to be used, or how First Nations will be projecting their financial information. I have to be very careful here, because there is going to be a exposure draft that CPA is going to be putting out as a result of my good buddy from Scott Monroe from the First Nation Financial Management Board. Scott's on the advisory committee, and they finally listened to him and talking about all of our concerns, which you've heard me raise over the years, and a lot of you auditors have brought this seriously, have brought this to me, that, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's things that we have to do in how we report in Canada for First Nations. Because we're reporting more than any other organization in Canada in terms of reports we do. You know, that segregation from funds come in, amount comes in, got to segregate it, costs associated with that fund, okay? So we really have cost centers that are unbelievable and hard to maintain. The 10-year funding process has helped that out to a certain degree, because there's not a requirement for schedules anymore other than the typical statement of financial position, okay, and statement of revenue expenditures, okay? So that's kind of a help. But the exposure draft, I think, will be very good to handle the concerns that we've talked about for years. Government business enterprises and the way revenue is reported, particular intangible assets, all right? These are issues that are being raised and currently studied, and hopefully we'll get some solutions that are workable. Because there's a lot of accountants and auditors out there that are really struggling, thinking, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because we're talking about specified audit reporting. We cannot have our funding officers, our funding organizations say to us, hey, okay, you got to go with the standard public sector accounting handbook, but as soon as there's a but, as soon as there's an extra schedule, what do we have? We have specialized audit reporting. So we have to kind of bring that into the mold, because this is what your auditors are really having problems with. And I see the problems in seeing the reports that have come in for certification. So we got to do something in that area. So hopefully we'll have some clarity, all right? And also clarity in the fact that sooner or later, and it's coming up, as of March 12, 2019, had a meeting in Ottawa, and the reduced reporting that you've heard me talk about for years is finally coming to pass. There's actually an exchange of information going on now on a test basis, okay? And the leader in that area has been Zintact Native Systems. They've been there right from the beginning. This is an 8-year process, and we've talked about it, but looking forward to some changes coming in that whole process to make it a little easier. Why should you be sending statements off to a funding service officer, and that funding service officer is going to spend up to 40 to 45% of their time, as per a study that was done by Vicki Whitehead a number of years ago, in terms of assembling that information and actually manually keying it into their system. So the electronic process is coming. It's coming for sure, and it's quite an exciting scenario, okay? And that's what AFOA BC and your technical advisory group have been involved in. Really good. Again, another plug for AFOA BC. Our directors are totally committed to making sure that our capacity development is there. They're working hand in hand with the First Nation Financial Management Board to make sure that we're all working together as organizations, which is really important. This is not really happening any other place in Canada. So you got a lot to be thankful about in the province of BC in terms of how the roadblocks have been broken down between these organizations. It's being very, very successful, okay? And hopefully the rest of Canada will catch on. But again, we have that western-eastern swing. Whatever we ship to the east, they kind of ignore unless they development. So we're kind of encouraging them to say, well, step up. Yeah, it's your idea as long as it gets done. Okay, that's where we're at with those initiatives. Okay? So Indigenous Service Canada, current funding approaches. Now, if you look at this closely, set contributions, you'll hear this later. Okay, terminated April 2018. Announcement came out, set funding was terminated. All right? That's not really the case. There was a clear announcement, but that's not really the case. It's still going to be available in limited duration and separate ways of dealing with that, okay? But that's the current fundings from ISK that we have to be aware of, okay? Just a summary that might be useful for you, okay? There we go. What is an audit? Good question. What really is an audit? Okay, got your checklists out. True and fair view of financial statements. A lot in that statement. Systematic and independent examination. Now, when you're looking at this slide, it's pretty cool. The way that our other presenters, including myself, thought was really cool, we had this in 3 different slides. Beverly got this down into a summary format that makes a heck of a lot more sense than what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years, right? So what did Bev do again? De-geeked it. So our slides have been de-geeked, which is good. Presented in an audit report. Third-party assurance, which is really cool, our funding groups, which will be here later on today in a panel discussion, which Paul will be looking after, which is really cool from our office. Okay. Financials free from material misstatements. Keep it up. Based on documents reviewed. And again, why is all this? The need for funds to be expended for the intended purposes. So what's important to us? If we got a schedule, we got to make sure that the revenue, okay, is in a relationship to the expenditures. Pretty simple stuff, but it causes all kinds of problems. And remember, they're your financial statements. You have to take ownership of them. The auditors do not have the right to change those. They're your statements. So we want to work on taking more ownership on those statements, right? Okay. You see some, yep, good. So this is the audit process. We start off with a follow-up from the management letter or audit findings review. That's all the recommendations, etc. Working on to the audit plan. In this particular case, it's the auditor's plan for you. But for you, it's working with the auditors to have your own plan. How are you going to assemble the information? So there's 2 plans going on. The auditors on the one hand and yourself on the other hand. Okay? And your organization. Preliminary assessment, the auditors will go through and say, hey, what are we going to do this year? Where do the changes come from, etc. How are we going to approach this year's audit? It changes every year. Okay? And the audit plan itself. So they devise an audit plan. So we kind of take the circle with them, so we should devise an audit plan for ourselves. And that's the assembly of information, the checklists, etc., as we go through the rest of the day. Performing the audit, when they come out and they visit. And what is the key when they're performing their audit? The key for you is you want to get them the heck out of there, right? When I was outside of public practice working in industry and the auditors would come in, I would try to get them out as soon as possible, and I'd try to put them over in a corner, all right? And that created some problems because you don't want to do that anymore. You want to keep them close by you so you can answer their questions quickly and get them out and be organized so they're not putting your files in all disarray. And if you blame your auditors for putting your files in disarray, whose fault is it? It's not really the auditors because they have a time frame to work with. We talked earlier with the auditors here, I did with a couple of auditors, and it's like, yeah, we're always on a time frame. You have to get it done in a certain period of time, bingo, all right? So they're time restricted. So if they've got a file and you give it to them, it could be anywhere. So you want to make sure that those files are in an organized fashion, and you control the files that you give to them in a sense that you get them ready ahead of time, all right? And conclusions and reporting. Now what's key here, from a management perspective, how many are in a management role where you would see the audited statements coming in and dealing with your auditors? Okay, what's really important for you is to understand, and not for yourself because you've been on the other side of the fence, but understand that when you look at the conclusions of the report, you want to see the report before it goes to management, even though that report has to be addressed to chief and counsel or board of directors. You want to see it first. Why? Because if you've had an interim audit, you may have already corrected something, and you want to get some praise for correcting that. So you want to make sure that you communicate all the time with your auditors, so you're in control. Completion of the audited financial statements, yes, this is always an issue. We talk about this over and over again. Make sure that chief and counsel or the signing officers are going to be there. You don't want your auditors waiting a week or two for someone coming back, chief and counsel coming back from holidays, and they have to sign the statements. Okay? I don't need to go around the room and ask the auditors how many times that's happened. It's happened a lot to me, and I speak from experience. And I'm sure it's happened to the other auditors that are here in the room. Okay? So that's really, really important. Make sure that you know when chief and counsel are going to be around for signing. Attendance at the AGM. Another issue here with attendance at the AGM. We're supposed to attend the AGM from the perspective of answering auditing questions. But what happens there often is you're asked questions from the floor, okay, and they may not relate to the audit. So you got to be very careful. Yes, auditors have to be very careful. But what's really important, that you communicate with the members that come from the community at the AGM. And I think it's really important to get there, to get the expression out and take some of the pressure off of chief and council or your board. I think that's really, really imperative you do that. I love going to AGMs just for that purpose, okay, and to learn what's going on. There's a couple nations, one particular, that actually pays and has a stipend for their membership to come to their meetings. The reason why they did this is because they wanted to get the word out. They wanted to get the members involved in their community. And it's had a great effect in terms of doing long-range planning. Because when they come to the meetings, they're talking about, hey, what's going to be down the road? What's coming up? And a lot of questions. When I first attended that first AGM, there was not an awful lot that was said, other than the fact that, we're here and you auditors are kind of a pain, etc. And that's what we kind of deal with. And at times we are a pain, particularly in different spots, but we can be a real pain. A year or two later, the questions that were coming from those very people were very great in a sense that they were thinking about their community. Now they're thinking about the well-being of their community. Their questions are really relevant to what was going on in their community. So it's really important to get that community involved in the process of finance. So we're talking about the Aboriginal Financial Officers Group, financial officers. This is who we're helping. We want you as financial officers to be aware of what's going on in your community and get input for your community. It makes your long-range planning very, very easy to do because you get a sense of where your community is going, okay? And then the follow-up audit management letter or audit findings report, okay? Any questions so far? Remember, just jump in because the whole purpose is we want to share information here, right? Good. Management responsibilities. To prepare information in the form of reasonable estimates. Use their judgments because they're your records. Maintenance of internal controls, really, really important. And protection, why is it all? For the protection of the nation's assets. That's what we're doing, is protection, protection, protection. Okay? Now, this is kind of cool, and this is another slide that I wouldn't think about doing, bringing in all the winter, spring, summer, and fall kind of cool pictures, okay? Kind of neat. So this was Beverly again, kind of de-geeking what we were putting together. This covered basically in that guide, and look at the guide, it's from page 19 to 22, and this was covered in one slide with a cross-reference to the guide. Kind of cool. So if you look at this, you can go home, look at the guide, and use it throughout the year. So annual audit process and audit planning. It's winter, spring, summer, and fall, right? Winter, spring, summer, and fall. That's the process. Not just the spring and summer. It's the whole year. And you have to get that mentality through the whole year. Okay? Communicating with your auditors, really important. And auditors like to talk to someone. They really do. And you'll find communication is kind of cool. How many have good success in communicating with your auditors? Super. They're great people, right? Super, thumbs up. We got a thumbs up. How about that? Any other comments about communicating with your auditors? Super. Yes?
They can be your worst nightmare or your best friend.
Isn't that cool?
Right?
Yep.
Depends on how you approach it. If you approach it, like you said before, it's a way to monitor the people's money. It's not like the government is saying you have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you should want to have auditors involved in the process so that you can better take care of people's money.
My gosh.
$10 you gave me.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. I was going to say he should take over. Hey, we got not another Mark. We got another presenter here. Wasn't that cool? Great. Okay. The audit prepares the audit findings report, management letter, adjustments recommended, very key. They're only recommended. And it's your responsibility to approve them, okay, on behalf of your delegated authority coming from Chief and Counsel. Assistance and follow-up in implementing recommendations, really, really important. Okay, and again, if you have an interim audit, you may have done some of these recommendations and you want to get credit for them, or know that you've done them to keep the auditor abreast of what's doing. And you have to understand it from the auditor's perspective. And we get all this work for 3 months of the year, and we have to digest stuff. We're not seeing your records all the time, and that's what's missed in the process. We don't see your records all the time, so therefore we're not as available and informative of where you're at with your records. So it's really important to communicate this, okay? And make sure that there is assistance, follow-up, implementing recommendations. Internal control and documentation, very important, all right? And planning the scope of your audit. Pretty neat stuff. Super. Okay, audit findings report. This is such a key element of the whole audit process. A key element, because this kind of sets your plan for the next year. Okay, what you do for the audit findings report, in assembling information, there will be responses in terms of minutes of meetings, which is very important because that's where your auditors get authority, okay, to look at a transaction and see that it's been properly approved. Annual reports, really, really important. Often asked questions, the last session in the NIMO was, oh, you know, where do we get examples of annual reports? You can get it on the website. A lot of them are published. Just put in the annual reports, First Nations, or in fact, First Nation Financial Management Board has them on their website, and we'll be publishing some as well in terms of examples. Status of your records, right? Good, bad, or indifferent? No, it's not in that format. It's like, we found that such and such wasn't reconciled, okay? And again, when we get into the compliance and substantive testing part of the process, we'll understand why. We want to be at a certain level. We don't want to have our auditors come in, tick and check all the time. We want them to get to the next stage. Understand that we got functional internal controls. Accounting-related issues, okay, and the audit findings report. Tangible capital assets, very, very important. Okay, setting limits for invoices you put together, just as a summary. Anything over $1,500 to $2,000, whatever your max is, make sure you take copies and have them ready for your auditors. Because you don't want to be in a situation where your auditors come in and say, look, we're checking out your tangible capital assets and we see this expenditure. Can you copy the invoice for us? So you got to run out and get the invoice. If you're looking at it at the time you're approving it, signing it, and cutting the check, that's the time to take a copy. Throw it in the auditor's bin. Okay? Deferred revenue, always an issue. You can take charge of the deferred revenue by simply asking your auditor for their working paper and then do it for the next year or attempt to do it, all right? Now you're saying, God, Norm, you're creating more work for us. Yeah, but creating more work, you may be able to get your auditors help you in some other areas because they don't have to do that. Use of budgets, unusual transactions and estimates. Okay, budgets are really important, but you need to have a budget process, okay? It doesn't help when the auditors go out, and I've been in this situation where, oh, you don't have budgets. Oh, I'll get it to you next week. You haven't completed it yet. The budget is supposed to be a plan for the upcoming year. The budget isn't to be derived after you know what the costs are already expended. It's supposed to be a guide. So you have to have a budget process and understand the budget process, that you're reviewing it, you're changing it if it's wrong, because remember, it's only estimates. Very, very important, okay? Quite important. Disagreements with management. Yes, we have to report any disagreements with management, typically, but most of the time you just don't have them because management is pretty good in terms of understanding what's going on. Issues encountered during the audit process. Very important that these are documented so you can learn from it, okay? So I don't want to ask the question, but I'll ask it anyway, but don't need to get any answers. If you got an audit findings report that has the same comments from last year or the same comments from the year before, I have to sit back and think, I don't think you're doing your job. Or you have to get assistance to help you get those things done. Other than the fact, and you should be discussing this with your auditor, is it something that's attainable that can be done. You do not want a wish list in an audit findings report. That's why you want to see it. You don't want to deal with a wish list. You want to deal with something you can do. Example, you have 1 or 2 staff members in your accounting department, and you got a whole internal control section that's dealing with issues encountered during the audit process. Said you should be doing this, 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 and this. But if this entails 3 to 4 people to do it, hey, that's not attainable, is it? So you want to have something that's attainable. And this is how you have to talk to your auditors. Yes, I realize that if we get more staff members, it has to change. That's why they're looking at, if you get more staff members, then you should have more controls, right? Any comments in that regard? Very, very important. Okay. Okay, your auditor's plan. Auditor's plan becomes your plan. Identify organizations changes. Really important. If you got more people that have come to the organization, it's really important because of the fact you should have more controls with those people that have properly been assigned and delegated their authority for approval. Addressing regulatory changes. Quite important. Okay. You may have funders that are saying, hey, you got to do something different this year. Again, maybe specialized audit reporting. Oh, sorry. Determining materiality levels, quite important. This should be discussed with your auditors for sure. And then you can set your own materiality within your own operation. Internal controls, typically from a First Nations perspective, is, hey, we're going to do it, but we really don't have an internal control department that can go do our own assessment. You can do your own internal assessment, and I think it's time within the whole nation structure that we have some of your own testing going on. I think is really important. Timing of the audit and estimated costs, really cool. You know, talk about costs before it happens. Assessing financial reporting risks identified from the previous audit, okay? And when you're going back and looking at timing and estimate of costs, you know, if your bill has gone up, you got to find out why, okay? And then finding out why, you ask your auditors, what did you do differently from last year? And typically speaking, your auditor's response might be, well, you know, we had to put through, just look at your adjusting journal entries. Your adjusting journal entries went from, oh, we had 10 last year, and you had staff changes. Now we're up to 40, 50, 60. In one case, I was dealing with 230. There's a bit of an issue there. So obviously, if we have to produce more costs, it means we analyze more, found more, and we kept having to keep digging, so our materiality level was looked after, and we were comfortable with your statements. Because we only see them once or twice a year, right? So it's really important to look at the adjustments that your auditors are suggesting your record should undertake. Because if they've increased, you look at that and think, oh God, my auditing fee is probably going to go up. And it should go up, because it's more time spent. But you have to find out the reasoning and see if you can correct it. Okay? Super. Any questions? That's always a delicate, the timing and the estimate of costs of an audit, all right? Okay, group activity. Review the memo. Okay. So if you look at the year-end instruction memo, March 31st, 2020, Clay Harmon developed this years and years ago when he was with the Penticton Band. And he found it very, very useful in terms of assembling information, okay, and getting stuff to him on a timely basis. So he set the deadlines and then did follow-up on it. So what we want to discuss here with your group, okay, other tasks to do with the audit plan to be ready for your auditor. Tasks should relate to at the beginning of the fiscal year, throughout the year, in the last month before the fiscal year end, and within the first month after the fiscal year end. All important dates, okay? And if you look at the memo and just read through it, we'll go through that in a moment, so we'll get all the tables working on this and get that discussion thing going. Then we also want to generate discussions related to identifying common changes in the everyday management of financial compliance. Boy, oh boy, that's a field in itself. You know, everyday management changes, it's full of change. And in terms of governance, contracts, reporting, expense approval, common challenges, okay? What to do with minimizing or eliminating and protecting your organization from them, and what to do if there is a problem. So, if we go through, give you a few moments to work on this. So what we're dealing with is a year-end instruction memo. So talk about it, go over it first, read it, talk about it at your table. A little bit of discussion to say, hey, does this make sense? Can we use it? And the question you got to think about is, if you have returned to this session from other years, did you actually use Clay's memo or something like it? Dealing with invoices, travel claims, travel advances and claims, timesheets, petty cash, cash advances, bank deposits, requests to invoice, inventory, really important, inventory taking, photography, copies, etc., variance to approved budgets, which is a real key, and unrelated risk registry, if in fact it's being used. So have fun.
For webcast viewers, you're going to watch the AFOA 20th anniversary video, or we're doing the engagement session?
Yep. For the web viewers, you're going to be watching AFOA BC's 20th anniversary video, which is kind of cool because we're just discussing stuff here. So please feel comfortable, enjoy the video, and thank you for being here.
And then there's 3 more license plates. So
We have some other license plate issues parked in the wrong spot.
I know AFOA is successful, and it's just, I get so involved emotionally sometimes when I think about it, because it's been good for me, and it's good for our community. It's been good for the province, our First Nations within the province, and it's been great for Canada.
More than 20 years ago, AFOA BC knew that sharing our knowledge with other First Nations would help transform our communities to again be leaders in our own economy. Tsawwassen First Nation is one of those leading the way. The 1990s began with the launch of a new era for BC First Nations. The modern treaty-making process, the Canadian Aboriginal Economic Development Strategy, on-reserve housing funds, we were regaining control of our future and governance.
There's a big gap in communities. There's communities that need a lot of help, and there's communities that are just wildly successful right now.
I think in the case of my First Nation, which is the Squamish Nation, geographically located in the Vancouver area, it is a great example of those two extreme situations, if you like, being First Nations, custom, culture, and also the economy. So we happen to live in an area geographically that is rich, but rich for not everybody. And so our ultimate goal has to be able to get into the mainstream of business and society, and at the same time preserve our culture.
All around us, economies and people were thriving, while our communities suffered housing, water crisis, high unemployment, and social injustices.
I encountered one situation in one community where they had a business that was losing money. I asked, why is it losing money? Well, because it always has. And that's not the right answer. We made some not major changes and turned that into a profitable company. So, just the way it is isn't necessarily the right way.
We had to find a way to participate in this new economy.
Be open to change, not necessarily to the change, not necessarily compromising, the cultural values that are already there, but maybe change in the way that business is being done.
In 1996, a group of Aboriginal community leaders met to discuss how to support First Nations with realizing their vision. The Aboriginal Financial Officers Association of BC was created to strengthen First Nation communities by building leadership and management capacity through professional development and education.
Being an accountant and not having the ability to talk to other First Nation Aboriginal accountants seemed like there was nobody out there. So with the formation of AFOA BC, it actually eliminated a lot of that. It actually brought a lot of First Nation finance people together and to talk about some of the things that were issues for them, some of the best practices that they shared amongst each other was another great thing, and just to really have somebody there to bounce ideas off of. And if you have a problem, somebody there probably went through the same thing, and they probably had a very simple approach to doing it.
Our vision, that all Aboriginal people and communities realize social, economic, and cultural prosperity.
I received an invitation from a group to attend a workshop, and they call it the Aboriginal Financial Officers of BC. To me, I was really quite excited about it because I had previously been a municipal administrator, and there was a similar organization called the Municipal Officers, and I thought, hey, this is what I need. I was very new to First Nations. I had only worked with them for maybe 5 years, and everything was still very new to me.
Our workshops are a starting point. Our sessions are a starting point, okay? Of gathering information, but the biggest thing is meeting other people and meeting people with similar issues and trying to deal with the issues.
AFOA BC members work for First Nations and Aboriginal organizations province-wide. Working with their leadership and community members, they have realized amazing success. St'alis First Nation is one realizing its dream.
How it helped me is by making me, I believe, a stronger and a better person. I present that to my council, which hopefully leads down into the management team.
St'alis operates businesses in tourism, forestry, fisheries, and has several partnerships and agreements.
As a matter of fact, we used their finance policy as a template for our finance policy for St'alis. And from that finance policy, we developed the FAL, which is recognized by the Financial Management Board. And we're near certification with the Financial Management Board at this time.
Over these 2 decades, First Nations have overcome numerous challenges: recognition of Aboriginal rights, returning to governance. We've transformed to become leaders in our own homelands.
At the time, Penticton Indian Band was under a remedial management plan in trouble. And I'm not giving away any secrets. We've told this story publicly before. Today, calls on Penticton Indian Band to serve as mentors for other communities. So that community has transformed from one that was under extreme stress and duress to one that is today a model of how a community should be run and how people should be doing it right.
The BC Aboriginal Investment Council reported there are 86 projects, over 1,200 companies, and First Nations in 500 agreements. Yet, there remains untapped opportunities.
There are literally hundreds of millions of dollars in different communities around this province right now. And for young people to consider a career in accounting and finance so that they can better manage those resources, they can have that impact on the quality of life.
AFOA BC will continue to support First Nations with capitalizing on these opportunities and transforming to be ready to live their vision.
In 50 years, we will see prosperous, educated, beautiful communities where people speak their language, Know their history.
I think First Nations are going to be the example of governance. I've always seen that First Nations governments have the most complicated government job there is there. They have to provide all the services, so where everybody else splits it up, so the municipality does some, and the province does some, and the federal government does some, First Nations have to do it all.
First Nations are going to be in a position of power. You never know. At this time, we may, by then, I'm hoping we're going to have a First Nation Prime Minister, and probably a majority of cabinet in Canada will be First Nations.
In one word, what is your vision for the future of First Nations?
Harmony, which means basically all parts working together. I'd like to see people working in the band office, people that are working in economic development, working in the daycare, working in finance, all of these parts coming together to make a great song.
Unified, okay? Unification in all their policies and unification where their goals are.
I actually have 2 words, active participant.
Self-sufficiency.
Progressive.
Empowerment.
I'm about to send it out in this date in here.
God, I love this guy. Welcome back. We have our people that are listening in. Welcome back. And what we've been going through is the year-end instruction memo, and we've gone over in detail. And the consensus so far in all the tables we've gone through are, hey, man, we'd use it again. And this gentleman just said, hey, it's helped out a lot. It's cool. Lady over here said, oh, you know, a little bit, the timing is a little bit too aggressive. So I pointed out that in our group that we did in Nanaimo, their point was, well, we're going to be more aggressive so we can bug them more to get the information. Maybe I shouldn't have used the word bug because he said, you know, just call them more on a regular basis, but really what he meant was bugging them. So it's good. So we're going to use this for sure. So we're going over to this table. We're almost finished for our new viewers coming back, and hope you enjoyed the video. How are we doing here? It's good? Oh, we got excellent. Super, good. It's workable. And how are we doing at our last table over here? Is it going to work? Oh, we got our coffees now, so somebody should be responding. How are we doing? Good? Aha.
I just wanted to echo what I thought I heard earlier. It's a bit hard of hearing, but somebody mentioning DocuLinks and sharing, getting the barcoding in and whatnot, and having an auditor section. We're doing the same thing as well, and it's a lot more helpful. What we're struggling with this memo would be very helpful for us is because managers tend to think like that it's all finance. It's all finance that's got to do it, but it's an organization-wide effort, really, to get these things done in a timely manner. So.
Wonderful. What is she saying? Delegate, right? Because aren't you tired of hearing and get a phone call, can you provide this to me? And yet you're providing them with statements on a regular basis in most cases. Boy, in a session a year ago when I brought this up, it was unreal. One person got up and said, that people really me off because of the fact that they've got it in front of them. They don't read the stuff. And I think he swore. Okay? And this is what we're dealing with. So how are we going to get away in June, end of June, get our stuff done so we can go on holidays when everything is good weather and everything else throughout the province and Canada? When? In July. We do not want to be around at the end of July, do we? We want to have all of our work done. And we want to have Chief and Council around to sign off. little bit of a repeat. Good. Super. So let's carry on. And what policies are needed, for sure, as a final wrap-up of the group activity 1, welcoming back our viewers again. Alrighty? Moving into, that's the document there, and it's in your handout material for those who have just joined us. Alrighty? And make sure you use it because it's a very good thing for you, and it will save you time, money, and frustration, and again, get you away on holidays when you need to be on holidays. Whoop. Oh, a little bit technical failure here. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Oh, there we go. I think we're back online here. Sorry about that. Alrighty, organizing for the audit. Don't you love these little diagrams that Beverly came up with? Okay, pretty cool, huh? Makes it simple. That's what we want to do, is simplify the process. Now this is neat. This original one, if you go back to, and you're a repeat offender as it were, if you're here in other years, you'll see that this thing took up about 9 or 10 slides. So when we condensed it, we got the point across, right? In a more organized fashion. Now remember, when you're doing PowerPoint presentations and you're presenting to your nation or presenting to a meeting, use the PowerPoint standard, which is basically 6 lines, no more than 6 words, and a font over 20 to 24, okay? Keep that in the back of your mind, alrighty? Because it's really, really important. Other than if you do what I do to escape it, because I'm wordy and I'm an auditor, okay, and sometimes I can't keep quiet. Sometimes, right? If you fly it in and use the download features, animation, it's really cool. It gets you that stage where you can put anything up as long as you can slide it in. You see how that kind of just dropped down? It's kind of cool. Why? Because when you're reading slides and reading a document, you want to go line by line. When you're hit with everything at once, it doesn't register in our minds, okay? We did a lot of work, AFOA BC and the Technical Advisory Group, it did a lot of work in looking into how we should present our documents, how we should do our reports, how we should do our PowerPoints. And a lot of stuff came out of it, and there's a lot of research that was done on the computer. So just look up PowerPoints if you want to get more information in terms of doing effective PowerPoints. And what's it all about? Communication. That's what's important, right? Right. So, files and binders, trial balance, budget, funding agreements. So when the funding agreements come in, what do? Just pick it up and throw it in your drawer? No! Scan it onto your system and dump it into a file. Why? Because the auditors need that to see if you are in compliance, to see if you're spending your money, to see if they got their cost center set up properly. Okay? So that's really important. Dump the funding agreement once you get it into a file, electronic file, scan it. We all got scanners? Anybody doesn't have scanners? How many monitors do you have? You knew I was going to get to this. How many monitors do you have in your office? 2? 2? 3? Ah! Fantastic. How many monitors? Everybody put up. How many have 2 monitors? Fantastic. How many have 3 monitors? Fantastic. How many have 1 monitor? Okay, what we need to do is you need to talk to... But how big is your monitor? Wow, yes. Yes. I asked this question 3 years ago, and somebody was adamant, I only need 1 monitor. I asked them the size. Why do we want bigger screens? So we can cut and paste and drop. That's cool with electronics, right? Now, when you're using monitors, be mindful. We've had some people advise us on how to best, from an eye perspective, how to use a monitor. So if you're right-handed, your monitor, your left monitor should be straight in front of you. Your right should be over here. So what do? You want to do this, okay? The other way, left-handed, you want to do this. If you got 3, you look in the middle and you dump everything in the middle, all right? Now, if you have 4, forgive me, if you have 4 and it's a long one, then you bring all this stuff up that doesn't fit in 1 page. right? And if you were used to working with staff, all right, it's really important to have a fourth. And you know what the fourth is? It's like a big, gotta watch my language. It's like a big TV. And the big TV allows you to bring other people in to see what you're doing. Because you don't want people coming over and looking over your shoulder to try and see what's on your screen. You just project it. So if you have the long one, then you have a middle one, left, right, and a big screen, man, you're set for management. Now, if you do go to your band council, if you do go to management to ask for 2 more or 3 more screens, don't tell them Norm told you, right? Because I go to sessions right now and all I hear is, you're the guy that said that we had to buy 3, 4, 5 monitors for our staff. What the fuck do they need them for? Okay? I says, Chief, it's okay, settle down. They're more effective when they have more monitors. They really are, to heck. What's a monitor? They just bring it up, bring it. When they bring it up, they lose time. Okay, a year or 2 later, I go back and ask the same chief, because I know him and her. How's it going? Oh, those damn monitors worked out all right. Okay, right? So you got a big screen, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, but make sure. And when you do, you cut and good. You can cut and paste and it's good. Because you want multi-screens, right? Don't stick to one, right? But again, please don't say Norm, because I still run into that problem. Right on. Statement of financial position. Revenue expense accounts, very important. Statement of financial position is really important because that's what auditors use. They start and they kind of reconcile and see what the balances are made of. So you should be allowing them to see what the balances are made of. Don't let them do their own review. Provide information for them. So what I'm really saying is, anything you prepare for your own meetings, keep it for your auditors. Throw it into that file, okay? And in some documented format, so you're not just reading a bunch of stuff. You want to save them and get them out of your files, right? Because you want to give them the information. Okay, prior year's ISK audit review letter, very important. Usually sent directly to them, but if they don't, you should have that ready and then go through it and with the auditor and say, yeah, this is what we've looked after, this is what we couldn't look after, this is where I don't think they're right, so can you help us argue? Okay, that's the standard in terms of reviewing that letter. Chief and council minutes, really, really important, as we talked about before. That's where we get our authority in terms of seeing that you have reviewed things and your system is working properly. And band council resolutions for sure, all right? And again, the benefits. My benefits slide went on forever, but all it encompassed was basically higher quality reporting, okay? Bev took 3 words to say that. I took 2 slides. Not good, right? Also, easier access to needed documents, for sure. I listed all the documents in last year's sessions. It's much better. Easier access needed documents. All the point we need to make, right? Consistent, brief, and to the point. Fewer misfiled documents. This is a key. I can remember when I was on the other side of the fence. I know it was the days that we had, real manual files, but they were stacked up, and you spent a week and a half after putting all the crap together that the auditors messed up, right? Now we're in the electronic age. We don't have to go through that. Make sure fewer missed files are going to be the benefit, and think, fewer missed files, I put it away. Fewer missed files, I put it away. It's a little bit of a jig that you can think about, okay? So everybody together, say to yourself in your own mind, this, fewer misfiled documents, fewer misfiled documents. Electronic file, fewer misfiled documents, right? Cool, we got that. Super. And control over confidential documents. This is really, really important, okay? Confidential documents. Okay, if we're dealing with human resources, payroll, we want to be very careful that we ask our auditors ahead of time what they want for the payroll side, because you don't want those things left out. I'm a fraud investigator, private investigator. Issues that I've looked at over the years have come from files that should not have been left out. They are confidential. So you got to be very careful here. And point it out to their auditors. No, it's kind of confidential. Tell us which ones you want in advance, because we are giving you stuff in advance. So you should be able to tell us what you're checking in advance. Yes, you got to come in on an independence basis and pick out what you need to pick out, but when they do, give it to them and ask them for it right back. Don't have it sit overnight. You're going to run into problems. I speak from experience and lawsuits in that regard. Okay? Okay, group 2 discussions. Review of audit preparation checklist. Now, this is where it was really quite important. When I did the session over on the island, and it was really neat in Nanaimo, we were going through this checklist, and I asked everybody, that had been here before, are they using this checklist? Okay? 3 people put up their hands. One of them happened to be our president of the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association, and I was hoping, God, I hope she's using it. And Sue was, and gave a real summary of how effective it happened and worked for her. All right? Another lady, before we get into this, another lady jumped up and said, look, we just had, in our operation, we just had our chief executive officer pass away. Then on top of that, our second in command got sick. The lady beside me and myself are stuck with this whole darn scenario that we have to deal with. We don't know what we're going to do. And then she said, if we would have taken this checklist, if we would have taken your risk assessment and went through this whole process, we wouldn't be caught up in this bind right now. So what we're going to do is take it back and make damn sure that our planning looks after the risks associated with people leaving, as well as putting information together so we can do our audit on a timely basis, so they're not going to be stuck waiting for funding because of the fact we can't comply with our funding agreements. Okay? That just happened 2 weeks ago. Really, really important. So, again, we'll break out again, review the audit preparation checklist. It is in your handout material. And it starts on page 59. Audit preparation checklist for fiscal year ends. All right? Purpose. Clearly define the purpose of the checklist and delegation of documents to be assembled. Okay, those pages, sorry my pages are wrong, but we've expanded it, so it's on 59. 60, changed again? Good, 60, super. Well, we were close, in the 50s. Break into groups as directed by your instructor. We're already in your groups. Okay, identify a note taker. We'll just come and I'll kind of jump on some of you to give their comments, so be prepared in your groups. And read the checklist section headings, highlight the key elements for each of these elements, etc. And basically trying to get some comments from each group, because what we want to do is learn from you so we can tell everybody else about what you're doing. So we can break down the barriers between bands, between organizations, and between you and particularly your auditors. So there could be a barrier there, all right, because of the independence issues and because of the fact that they have to stay independent. So I'll give you some time to go over these and understand the format that this is put in. It's put in the format at to do. That's what you should be doing throughout the year. And it says before the visit, prior to the field work, and during the visit. Very key times that these things are to be done. And they're checked off accordingly in what I suggest. And Suki's been involved in this as well, thinking, yeah, Norm, we can do this before, we can do it after. Because Suki's an auditor, but he's also a consultant. So, he's out there working on a day-to-day basis with the nations, and pretty cool. Came up with some good ideas. And what to provide to your auditors. So each group is broken out into section to do and provide to your auditors. Okay? So working through the confirmation and financial records, operations, et cetera, and going through all the points. So take some time to review that. And we've already had some comments in some of these areas already. So please take time to look at these, and we'll give you probably 2 or 3 minutes to read it through, and then we'll give you some discussion time for another 4 or 5 minutes. Could take days, but anyway.
Hi, everybody watching from First Nations and Aboriginal organizations from around British Columbia. We're here today at the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association Audit Preparation Workshop. And we've got, throughout the day, we've got people that are here. They're going to share with you tips and ideas in terms of what they've learned and how to work with an audit and be ready for it. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to our first guest.
Hi, my name is Frank Wilson. I'm from Lower Similkameen Indian Band, and I am the finance manager there. I want to share two things that have helped me manage my department. The first one would be create control documents. The second would be create folders and subfolders. Okay, number one, create control documents. Those are spreadsheets that help you take the data out of like Sage or your QuickBooks or whatever and allow you to see it in a form in front of you. That way you can compare month to month, quarter to quarter. For example, I like to enter my payroll timesheets in a control document. That way when I enter it into Sage, I can print out the report from Sage. If it matches my spreadsheet, then I know I have payroll correct, then I can go ahead and post it. You don't want to post and then have to do a lot of corrections. Make sure your spreadsheets are reusable, so you don't have to recreate them every month. You can just copy them over and enter the new information and all your calculations will happen. The second one is with creating file folders. When somebody asks you a question and you have to run over and look in a file cabinet, that takes a little extra time, then you have to scan it. So as you go through, scan your important documents, enter them, say, in a accounts receivable folder, and then say by the Ministry of Forests. Then when you name the files, name them with the year, the month, and then the date, and then a title that tells you what's in that document, invoice number or whatever. That way, as you enter these files in the different folders over the years, the most current ones should stay near the top, and you can easily find them by that. And that would be all I would like to add today. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Stay tuned. We're going to have a couple more people sharing their ideas and tips with us throughout the day. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. Hey, hi. Hello, everybody. We're back here at the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association of BC, the audit preparation workshops. We're here talking to another of the attendees on tips on how to work with your auditor, prepare for your audit process itself. So I'm now going to hand our mic over to Sherilyn. So you want to reintroduce yourself, say where you're from, your title, and let's get going.
Hi there, Na'amet Salchomoskwe. Na'amet is my traditional name, Talitzakwa Sta'elis. I come from Sta'elis Nation. I've been recently appointed as the acting finance director, and I was appointed mid-audit. So it's been a huge learning curve for me. One of the things that I learned most importantly is that audit preparation is an organization-wide effort, which also includes ensuring that our policies are in place and our policies are implemented and followed. So just getting that general understanding that it's everybody's effort in order to see a successful audit. I'm really grateful to be here. I want to thank all the organizers, and I'd like to thank everybody who put this together and everyone whose time and effort that are here. We had a really great discussion today about having our leadership understanding the qualities of the audit and how important it is to convey that our internal controls continue to be met. And that's where it comes from, actually. It comes from us, and it comes from the people. In order to see where we're at. So it's a piece of accountability, a piece of transparency, but there's also a piece of checking in. How are we doing? So kind of talking about the purpose of the audit and helping our leadership understand that it's not just a check mark at the end of the year, but it's a constant year-round thing of progression, of keeping track of how are we doing. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherilyn. And back to you. We'll be back with another person in a couple more minutes. Thank you.
Alrighty. Hey, we're ready to go. And we want to welcome back our viewing audience. Yeah, it's been quite an exercise here. We've had a lot of comments. You know, basically what this table's telling me is, you know, when I did the checklist, it amounts to a lot of efforts, a lot of sleepless nights and frustration getting it on paper. Okay? This gentleman suggests I should get counseling. I don't know. I'm just trying to help out. But you know, it's a good point. Yeah, this was a collective voice here, apparently. But seriously, the point that was made from this table, which I think is really good, they're saying you should have a place for dates and who to assign it to, etc. And I think that's really good. And the note side of the, I was trying to condense it so we could get it in the notes, because it's a lot of information here. So we could add another column, but there's another thing too, is when we projected this is another excuse. When we projected this, all right, this is on letter. If you went the other way, okay, you can get those in, but it's more pages. So then the idea is that you could break out these sections, okay, if you scan it onto a system, okay, where you can bring back into an Excel format, then basically you can use it and expand on it, seriously, okay? So the whole idea is it's a guide for a checklist, but break it out and use it in the most effective manner. It brings in all the comments, right? It brings in what you should be putting together and then some, okay? But it should help if you get it into a format that you can use in your whole operation. How's that sound?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Otherwise, you know, the document wasn't too bad. Good job.
Super. My God, we got a lot of people with opinions here. Isn't this cool? So it's too bad that our audience that are visual and seeing us here can't be here with us. It's too bad. You know, the food is good. The facility is great. Super people to deal with. And you know what? We got accountants and finance people in here with a sense of humor. And I've said all of my life, finance people have to have a sense of humor to deal with the day-to-day operations and the structure and stress that they have to deal with. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Super. Everybody else agree that we have to have personalities to deal with the job that we deal with? Because we take everybody's stuff, right? We have to deal with everybody's deadlines. Get this done. Can you get this to me? Can you help? And remember what I mentioned earlier? I gave you that 3 months ago. Yeah, but I don't know where it is. Can you give it to me again? So they expect us to know where everything is. And one of the points that seriously that came up here is that when you're assembling the information for this, when documents come in, the point that was made here is you may be scanning it 2 or 3 different times, all right? So when I've discussed this with computer people, it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe we should have a document structure in our operation. So when something comes in that's labeled to a person, dump it in that person's file. Or if it's labeled to an individual, as I said, dump it into that individual file. Or if it's labeled to a department, dump it in a department's file. But you got to dump it somewhere. So again, the comment was made, hey, you know, we've gone paperless or attempting to go paperless. Now what we're doing is we're running out of space on our computers. All right? Because what are we doing? Norms created. Double scanning, triple scanning, quadruple scanning. We don't want that. So what we have to do is bring it back to that earlier stage, get it right back to the receptionist, to the person in that department where the mail goes to, all right? And get it out of the hands of the managers that are putting and assembling this information. That works really, really well. What are you doing as well? Delegation of duty. The other point is internal control. If the manager hasn't seen it, it's in the system, very difficult to have collusion, right? So from a fraud and investigative perspective, you've looked after a big issue. You basically resolve your problem of collusion. Because when it comes in, someone else is doing and taking that document and putting it where it should be. Other than the fact that if your reception's collusion with your entire department. But again, you cut down on that problem, all right? The initial problem. Super. So good. Any comments coming from this table in terms of the checklist that we can talk about? Sir. Boy, you got to meet that guy over there. You know, he's good.
I remember you mentioning adjusting journal entries, and I have a question. Why don't your account codes match our account codes when you create adjusting journal entries?
That is such a good comment. Oh, man. You know, and us as auditors in here, we've got to take possession of that because it's really a good comment. You know, we have maybe our own count codes. But in this day and age, can we not get to some consensus on that? This is the problem that I've ran into in reduced reporting. When you're dealing with ISK, okay, I spent probably a year going over 650 codes, converting it down to a code that's understandable. Okay? After we're finished, the issue was, well, wait a minute, this is Ottawa. The issue is, well, you know, Norm, it's really irrelevant because we changed our codes again. This was after 3 months. So we're dealing with the same issue all the way around, okay? Now, one probable solution to that is, you know, it's really easy to do a chart that shows this count represents that code count. And you can do it very easy when you're using 2 monitors and 3 monitors. Got that in again. It works. But there is that problem that accountants and auditors have their own system because it's set up basically as caseware. Or if you're dealing with any of the national firms, they have proprietary systems. So their accounts are different. Why? Because their working papers are assembled that way. So you got to come up with some consensus when you're doing journal entries to make sure that they're in your code. Okay? And that's difficult. The only thing I can suggest is work that out with the auditors to say, well, we'll transmit it to you, okay? But in that transmission, you have to enter it into your system in our codes. Because whose statements are they? Right? So that onus has to go to the auditors to say, hey, listen to us. There are codes, there are statements, okay? And we're paying you for this. That's when you are paying for them. You know, the auditors are here, I'm being paid, so. Right? Any comments coming from the auditors in terms of that? Oh, I know what I'm going to do. This lady back here is on both sides of the fence. What do you think about that comment? And you're dealing with it now, right? What do you think?
Deloitte, we just copied the client's coding, so whenever we gave them adjusting entries, it was the same.
That's cool. Good job. Now she's on the other side of the fence. So what's happened there? Just accept the client's codes. And that would look after your problem, right? Absolutely. Any other comments from any other auditors in that regard? Oh boy, here comes a big one. Whoops. Oh, no, not at all. Super. Alvin, go ahead.
Sometimes it happens when the auditor imports in the data. We actually invert the numbers so we can sort the programs by department, whereas most clients, they have their account number and then they aggregate it to the department. So they'll have like account 7,000 and then that account will be 7,000 and then they code to the individual departments, you know, department 1 to 200. When the auditor imports it in, we invert the account numbers over. So that's one of the reasons why it may not match over.
Sound good? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We'll work on that.
No, we started to discuss it. I just didn't get to why.
Oh, okay. So you explained that quite well, Alvin. That's good. Super. So I'm not involved in that process, am I? At this point, no. Any other comments in that regard? Oh, hey, just a moment. Got more comments over. Am I in my guidelines? Hello. I'm supposed to stay in that walkway, but it's hard when you're walking around. Sorry, I'll go slow.
Sorry. Go ahead, sir. One issue we have is there's changes in executive directors from time to time. As you know, in your organizations, they like to put their own stamp on. We just finished up an organization where the new executive director came in and completely revamped the chart of accounts. And this is a chart of accounts that had something like 300 separate accounts in it. So to make the statements comparable between 2 years, somebody had to go through and recreate them, and that ended up being us, but just because the client didn't have time. So if you're going to do something like that, be aware it's going to be a real pain up front, and it's going to require maybe 3 days, something like that, too.
It's going to be a pain, but it's not going to be a pain up front, to tell you. Really. That is a real issue, comparative figures. Okay? And the other issue that I should raise, and very good point, is when you're doing and going for 10-year funding, or if you're going for any type of certification, in the processes that are coming forward, you're looking at 5 years. So if you're doing that with every executive director change, you got a real problem. You know, you got a consultant coming in, spending an awful lot of time assembling data, okay? Hope they got 2 monitors, 3 monitors, assembling data to put that together. And that's a real pain and very expensive. I've seen some huge bills come in just to do a comparative side. Plus the fact you've got funding organizations that have got your data, they have their statements in a format. How are you going to be consistent from year to year? And auditors have a problem that we have to be consistent from year to year. Otherwise, we're talking about presentation issues, okay? Particularly when you're dealing with intangible assets, particularly when you're dealing with funds, etc. Because understand the problem with First Nation finances and First Nation statements, okay? Where, if from an accounting perspective and a bookkeeping perspective, this came up in discussion 5 years ago. Norm, we just got into accounting. What we can't understand is from the bookkeeping courses we took, an item that's capital is capital. It's a fixed asset. It's a tangible capital asset. Why the heck are we showing that in the schedule and listing it revenue and expense? You've heard me talk about this before. I'm whining. Sorry about that. But you cannot say, okay, and deal with the issues that you're dealing with, comparability, because First Nations accounting is different. Why do we bring in capital assets, intangible assets? Because of the fact the funders need to be a source and see the source. They got to say, we've given you money for this, we want to see it expended for that. The bottom line is surplus deficit. But we've included capital in a revenue and expense statement. And we're saying income, we're saying expense. We're saying revenue, we're saying expense. Doesn't make sense. These are some of the issues that we hope to address if Scott is successful in getting the exposure draft up to a different level, brought into a different level. But we have to start and walk slowly until we get to that stage. But these are the issues that are facing you on a day-to-day basis that are really, really serious, that need attention. Very good comments. Are there any other comments? We've got these ones here, comments down here about the, where were we? Yeah, talking about the checklist. Any thoughts on the checklist? Ladies? It's long. Yeah, but you know, you only take what's relevant. A big pardon? Oh, sure. Yep, make that available. No problem. Oh, a mic man, yeah. The question was, can we get the Excel version? I would say yes. I see our ladies at the back say yes. Okay, fantastic. We can. I'm sorry?
The edited Excel version.
The edited Excel version. Right on. Excel, right on. We got you. We hear you. We understand. Any other comments? We got that too. We got most of the tables. This one, yeah, this one's just a continued discussion, which is good. It's a good thing they're in the middle of the table because then I can move back and forth and get them. Oh, at the end. Oh, hi. Hey, we got comments.
I just made a comment with the group that we're going to customize this to add the position. So what position is responsible for each, on each column. And share it organization-wide.
Super. Now, I like that because she's been here before. So finally, we're going to use it, right? Good. How many have been here before? Hands up. Are you now going to use it? Yes. Do we have a commitment? And to our viewers, it is really important that you look at these documents because they're going to save you time. It's extremely important that you digest them and try to use them. In these sessions, we ran into comments such as, well, you know, the USB keys were fine, but, you know, we like to use something, we'd like to come to a session, we like to learn like that and get it done. That's not the case. Accountants, all of you. Investment advisors, all of you. Managers, all of you. We haven't learned what we've learned by coming to a session, leaving and expecting to have an answer for everything, are we? Okay? So we've got a guide that can help us. We got a checklist that can help us. Now we have to just digest it for our own operation and work on that communication, right? And what is that communication? Delegation, right? Super. Okay, any other comments? Good show. I guess I better stay back here. Good show. Thank you, Paul.
Just a quick thought. When you're running down a checklist, I personally like the drop-down boxes on anything online. Would there be, I don't know if there is, but links? So if you're going down a checklist and then you press on a link and then all the documents show up right there. So then, you know, you're not going from screen to screen to screen. It's just, you know, word for thought. Just as you go down checklist, it just makes it that much easier to gather and then have all your documents in one spot rather than, you know, going screen to screen. Just my thought. As I was going, I'm a first-time finance person, fresh out of university.
Good, welcome.
So I'm just like, I have thoughts coming out and just, so I just try to spit them out whenever I can.
No, that's good. We all have thoughts, and we try to spit them out when we can, but as you get older, you spit less.
No.
or sorry, spit more. Yeah, right. Maybe me spit more. Moe says I spit more, right, buddy? Yep, for sure. Good comments.
Thank
Fantastic. Any other comments? Okay, so I'll take it that we are going to use it next year, and when you come back, you're going to say, Norm, it worked, but. I want to hear the buts. Okay? Or Suki, it worked, but. Right? Because Suki had a lot of comments up in Kamloops, and he had a lot of comments as well that we get together and we talk about it, because Suki's on our board as well. He's a fellow board member and very experienced, so we'll be discussing more stuff and hopefully improving. So understand the guide is an ongoing process, right? Ongoing changes, and the PowerPoint will be ongoing changes as well. All right? So we have to push on. Super. Okay. So we've got, I think, the verbal notes. Yes, for sure. So we go on to your auditor. Oh, now we're into the cool stuff. Auditor's primary responsibility. Identify items that have a reasonable possibility of being materially misstated. That's so important, right? That's what we're looking for. So if you're giving them all the information, etc., in the format that we're talking about, then you make his or her job a heck of a lot more easier to deal with, right? Cool. Design and execute tests to determine if misstatements have occurred. And how do we do the misstatements? We make sure they're recorded. Now, when you're talking about materiality, from our perspective of a funding group, materiality might be different from the perspective of the auditor. The auditor's looking from the thing, well, what are they comfortable for? And what are they comfortable with in terms of determining an amount? But from your perspective, it may be a problem. Your materiality might be different. Why? Because if we're talking about funding coming in from different sources, funding coming in that are going to create different cost centers, it's really important to determine, hey, if you misallocated $2,500 to $5,000, it may not be material, but to you it would be, because that's an expense out of that program. And if we're back to set funding from an ISK perspective, you may have to pay that back, and it could have been a reallocation. So then you may be looking at double the amount. So my advice to you, you're different. You're even different than your development corporations. You're different in the sense that you want to make sure your adjustments are posted. You don't want to see them carry forward each year, because they may affect you differently. And repeating myself, because purposely repeating myself, it may be out-of-pocket expenses that you may be entitled to, right? You may not have a deficit. You may not have a surplus, depending on where you are with the way the expenses need to be correctly allocated, okay, between funds and where your funding source is coming from. All right? Oh, it's 10:54. My God, are we having fun? I guess we are. Norm, smokers need a break. So to the audience, you have your smoke break, okay? We're going to have our coffee and smoke break here, okay? So we're going to take a break, okay? Everybody can stand up first before they take a break. I didn't realize how late it was. Please stand up, other than our lady over here. Everybody stand up, okay? Thank you, everybody. Round of applause. You guys are great. Super. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. We're back here at the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association of BC Audit Preparation Workshops here in Vancouver. Before we get started with our next tip provider, want to make sure we recognize that we are sponsored by Indigenous Services Canada for these workshops. Thank you very much for your support. I'm going to turn the microphone over to our next guest, who is going to talk to you about how to make an audit go well and mostly communicating with your auditor. So, Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Beverly. My name is Paul Flesher. I work for AFOA BC in their finance department. It's a department of one, so it's just me. But in my experience going through audits, the thing that I find most helpful is sometimes asking the auditors why they are interested in a piece of information, because it can help facilitate better communication. For example, sometimes the auditors will ask you for a general ledger listing all of the journal entries that have been posted throughout the year. So we can produce that in multiple ways. We can produce it in terms of a paper report or a PDF. We can also produce it in terms of dumping it into Excel. But sometimes when they ask that question, what they really want is they want to have a set of data that they can import somewhere, that they can filter, that they can do selections from. So I always find it good to ask, how do you want the information presented to you? Because it can be much more efficient if we give it to them in the manner that they require it. Similarly, I've had experiences where they come to me with a question, interested in learning a piece of information or needing to support a balance on the balance sheet, and they ask a question that I find kind of odd. And so I find if I ask, why do you need it, or tell me what you're trying to prove or support, if they tell me how their test works, I can analyze what I need to give them in order to give them more complete information. So for me, sometimes supporting the audit through greater communication, understanding not just what they need, but why they need it, and the format that they can use it in, it just makes the whole audit experience a lot easier for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So helping us to communicate better with our auditor and talking audit. Thank you, Paul.
Thank
you. Viewing audience, we'll be back to you in a few more minutes with another guest, and then back to the workshop. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, let's get started again. Welcome, viewers. And just for our viewers, in the screen just behind me, okay, we have representatives from ISK talking to our auditors. So we are functioning right now without our auditors who have gone back to discuss concerns that they may have over funding, etc., and other reporting issues with ISK. So that's happening behind us, okay? So if you hear some murmurs and conversations, it's coming from behind us. And they are very, very calm, cool, collected, so it should go okay. You know, auditors are very good communicators. So we have 5 or 6 back there. But we have 14 viewing and joining us today. So let's have a round of applause for our viewers, okay? From all over the place. Welcome. And remember, any information that we have here will be available to you, and it'll be available on our website as downloads and whatever. All right? Lots of ideas today, which is pretty cool. So let's carry on. We just went over the auditor's preliminary responsibilities before we broke into sections to have our break, which I was a little bit late. And sorry, they're very loud behind us. Auditors are really loud, aren't they? My God. And I got the mic. And we have food coming in. Sorry for people that are viewing. We have no food for you. So maybe take a break and go into the kitchen or wherever you are. Okay? Thank you. Super. Carrying on. Categories of importance, okay? Transactions, all right? Starting this way. Again, thanks to Beverly, because this probably took a lot more slides. I estimate probably 6 slides to go over this individually, but you get the point in seeing it the way it's been presented, and I think this is pretty cool. But we do appreciate any comments related to the presentations and the guide itself, okay? So, transactions, what we're looking for, categories of importance. We're looking for existence, rights and obligations, okay? The completeness, and the valuation and allocation. Now, remember what we talked about earlier, how important the allocation is for us, because we want to make sure it gets into the right fund. So we've expended the money and we don't have to pay it back, right? If that's the case, if it's set or any other timed funding. One of the benefits of the 10-year funding is the fact that, hey, 10 years, no payback. You use it in the way you need to use it, other than other funding that may be in a set or a fixed category. Okay? And of course, ISK will be going over that later on in detail. Okay? The representative, Tony's here. Account balances. Okay, occurrences, rights and obligations again. Completeness. Classification and understanding. And accuracy and valuation. Now, when we're dealing with tangible capital assets, we're really not dealing with valuation. We're dealing with the fact that the asset exists. And we'll get into that in more detail. And then working on to presentation and disclosure, occurrence, rights and obligation, completeness again, classification, understanding, and accuracy. Pretty much all the same. But when you're looking at presentation and disclosure, understand that these are your financial statements. So if you want to communicate more than what the auditor is presenting in their notes, and remember, notes to financial statements are there to guide the readers of the financial statements. So if you say you want to make a comment on the statements or a note that better explains a section, then you can basically say to your auditors, we would like to add this note for clarification for the readers of the financial statements. Okay? And this is becoming more and more important in terms of communication. All right? So be aware of that you're not just stuck with that standard, which is a minimum standard, okay? And the standard, you can have more by reporting more. All right? Okay, substantive compliance testing. This is what we've been talking about, what the auditors do. We've got substantive and compliance testing, substantive test to detect material misstatements. So this is basically when they come in and they're saying, oh, we want to go through all these invoices, checking these invoices and tracing them to the accounts to make sure it works, okay? And if they find discrepancies, gone to the wrong accounts, they keep doing it until they feel comfortable from a materiality perspective and from their testing perspective. So where you want to be is you want to be on the compliance side, whereby there's a test of internal controls, your systems are in place, to ensure whether internal controls are operating effectively. So once they do a bunch of testing and say, oh, your controls are effective, hey, you move away from the substantive side, go into compliance. So what are we saying? Your auditors are accepting your systems are working, so therefore, from your perspective, if you save the auditor's time in that regard, okay, you may be able to use them in other areas that be more functional and more important to you. So this is where we want to be, right here, on the compliance side, knowing your internal controls are working, okay? Red flags, cool slides, huh? I love this. It brings the point very clearly. Approval is lacking, a problem, an internal control issue. Transactions require reallocating. Remember, you want to know where the allocation went, okay? Because your reallocation is specific for funding, all right? Because understand again, and I keep saying this, your auditors are only in once or twice a year. You know where these should go, and you can pick it up much quicker than your auditors can in most cases. Items cannot be traced to a bank statement, all right? That's where you got some issues, okay? And invoices contain arithmetic errors. Now, when you look at invoices in this day and age, a lot of them are electronically generated. So when you look at arithmetic errors, it's not as prevalent as it used to be, aging myself a bit. So what you're looking at is quantity. You want to make sure your quantities are right. So when we're talking about errors, we're talking about errors basically in quantity. Invoice, how many do we actually get in? Where's the verification that actually came? That's where we're looking at the discrepancies, making sure that the quantities agree with the pricing and the pricing side, okay? Because arithmetic you can just basically rely on because it's on the system. Yes, sir. Ha-ha.
You're saying the invoices look digital, but I find, and because that's the way I was trained, is that we still put a tape to them if they're more than 10 or 12 items, because some of them they look digital, but actual people just write them in and they do their own math. So you pretty much have to verify all that stuff. Thanks.
For sure. Good. All right. Good comment. All right. But from an auditor's perspective, again, okay, we're looking at it, but we're taking that into consideration as well. Okay. Good point. Super. Documents do not agree to the contract amounts. That is so important. Variances. So, again, what we talked about earlier. If you got a budget variance, you've got a contract, and you see there's a variance, and you discuss it with chief and counsel, or management, or whomever, the approval authority, then that might be all right. So if you already documented, why leave it to the end of the year and the auditors are going to look at the same thing and say, hey, wait a minute, there's a variance. So if you've got an explanation on those monthly statements, keep your notes, right? And while we're on the topic, how do you keep notes? Notes can really easily be kept using Dragon Naturally Speaking voice recognition, all right? Really good way of keeping notes. Not an expensive program, okay? And MindView is another one which allows you to do basically flowcharts from meetings. So those are two systems and software that can really help you on a day-to-day basis. But Dragon Naturally Speaking, I use all the time. And you know, you can even use them in meetings now because new versions, you set up a recorder, okay? I got a recorder over there to look at. You put it in the middle of the table. And the cool thing, if you're in meetings, only one person can talk. You know, you get in a meeting, you got a guy like me that won't shut up, you know? Sorry about that. You know, you want to use that, so use your recorder and say, okay, only one person at a time's got to speak, because remember, we don't have a person that's doing this manually typing it in, okay? But it will recognize your voice and transcribe it, right? And it'll transcribe everything, so you have to watch what you're transcribing and read it. I have at the office, I had a doctor phone me, and when him and his wife come in, I think, man alive, there's so much intelligence between these two people. Surgeons. So doctor was really uptight about getting a letter from a well-known lawyer in town in the tax area. And he's saying, you know, I got this letter, you know, a Section 85 would be good. I'm on the phone. But, you know, you should consider an 85 with document backup. I'll be there in a minute. So this went out. So I said to the doctor, he's really concerned. He figures the guy's, getting really to the stage where he's breaking up and having a whatever, because he's really, really pressed for work. So I said to the doctor, what does it say on the bottom? Oh, not reviewed by and sent out for purposes of discussion only. I said, he's okay. I said, why? Why is he okay, he asked me. I said, he's okay because he's using Dragon Naturally Speaking, and he didn't proofread his own text. And the lady that did that is new, because I know this. She just came into the office and didn't realize that. So if you're using Dragon Naturally Speaking, remember to proofread. Because if you happen to say, oh, whatever, in the background, it will pick it up. It never used to, but it will pick it up. And it'll also pick up and won't pick up grunts and groans. So if you're going through and you're going, I would like to transcribe this, our meeting today, and it took place at such and such a date, the would be a stroke. So you end up through all the program in the earlier versions with strokes or periods. It doesn't do it anymore, all right? And also, what it does, it stops and allows you to do a whole sentence so it makes sense and picks up the grammar really cool. So it doesn't do any misspellings, and it's really great. So consider that, all right? So what we talked about in terms of technology? 3 screens, maybe 4. And Dragon Naturally Speaking, okay? And MindView. Programs that will really, really assess you on a day-to-day basis. Alrighty? Cool. Then the auditor may require further samples. And that's when we talked about the substantive and the compliance side. All right, the difference. Okay? And again, in red, so cool. And again, see, there's more than 6 letters there, more than 6 words, I should say. But when you bring it up like that, hey, you're okay. From the standard of PowerPoints in communication. If your auditor is satisfied with his or her initial sample of your data, no further testing will occur. That's where you want to be. No further testing. Because that's what you're thinking. No further testing. Holidays are coming up. I'm going to get this done in July. I'm going to be gone. And I got these guys and gals, even though they're friendly, out of my office for another year. Right? So we want to get the auditors in and out very quickly, and you can't do that unless you are prepared and what? Delegated. Okay? Cool. Preparation matters. Okay? Preparation and accuracy of accounting records plus effective financial policies equal audit and dollar savings. Okay? Accounting department priority, crucial to the process. All right? So again, we talked about it earlier, and this is where I said I'll repeat it over again because it's important. Make sure your chief and counsel or managers are there to sign. Okay? Because we want to make sure that the department priority is getting the damn statements out the door that are audited. You don't want them to be tied up. You know, I can recall over the years that probably 7 or 8 issues and instances where we've had to wait a week or 2 or 3 to get statements signed. And in fact, I can remember 3 particular cases where they're late because the chief wasn't there to sign it. So when I sent him, I got an email back and the chief says, oh no, it's okay, you sign off. And I say, yeah, but you know, you got to think about this from an election perspective. You're the leader of your nation, so you should be signing off because you want to make sure that you're at meetings. What is going to appear when the statements come out and your signature's not on it? I'll be there in the office in a minute. Okay? Political thing. So you can always use that excuse. What does it look like, chief, if your name isn't on it? We need you around. Or give me approval by email. Once you've looked at it, that I can use your signature. All right? And careful on the signatory authorities. You need a policy for that. A policy for signatory authorities. All right? Really needs to be done. All right? Electronic signatures. Aha! Your auditor can't. All right? Can't. See, the glass is half full. Pretty cool. All right? Oh. Guarantee 100% accuracy? No. When you're looking at a fraud investigation and any type of investigation related to that type of engagement, you're looking at a specific issue and you're looking for damn near 100% sampling. You're looking for the evidence backup to support your conclusions. When you're looking at an audit, it's a general perspective. They're going on materiality. They're not reviewing 100%. They're going on the standard for the nation, the standard for that particular group in Canada, whatever it might be, and say, well, the norm is going with this percentage of materiality. All right? It's a lot different when you get into 100% sampling or when you get into fraud and those type of investigations. All righty? create an audit process that eliminates all risk of misstatements. You just can't. Conclusion's going to be there. You just have to have a mindset to see it. See strange things, look into them. All right? Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Adjust the nation's financial statements without the approval of management. Right? In the past, and I'm dating myself, I'm sorry, in the past we used to say, oh fine, sign it, it's all right. The statements are signed, therefore we know everything along the side has been approved. No, the individual journal entries have to be approved. When we go through inspections at our firms, okay, CPA inspections, when they come in to make sure every 3 years that we're up to standard, what they look for is to make sure that we are actually going in the audit and reviewing audit adjusting entries, okay? Not made by us, but by the client. So we've got to review your entries, and our entries have to be reviewed, okay? So there's quite a process in review of the accountants and auditors that are coming in to do work for you. It's called professional standards, okay? It's not cost effective to review every transaction and compare to your general ledger. It just won't happen, right? And yet, from your perspective, you're probably asked, oh, I see this, I want a forensic review. I want an audit review. You know, there's criminality here. Those are all allegations, right? All allegations. Oh, excuse me. God. I just recognized it. Sorry about that. Aha. That's good. So, I am really proud of you. I haven't heard any phones other than mine. Those who are listening, I really do apologize. I thought I shut the damn thing off, but, you know, being that we're going on vacation right after this, I think I've got some impatience, and some of my grandchildren are trying to say, no, where are you? We're supposed to be going to Hawaii. Okay, a little bit early. Okay, so I got a 2-year-old that's really, really impatient, that wants to get going. So sorry about that for the distraction. We'll carry on now. And again, you know, you should give yourself a round of applause as well, because I've sat here, haven't heard phones, and I haven't seen too many people use phones, which means, how'd you get away without people bugging you? You must have control of your operations. You really must, okay? When we first started these sessions, it was a phone would be going off all the time. People would be jumping out, walking outside the door, answering phone calls. Every single year, we've seen less and less of that, and I think that's really important. Okay, round of applause, please, for yourselves, again. So, it reminded me when my phone went off. Shut the damn thing off, Norm. Anyway, your auditor's role focuses on asset existence versus valuation. We talked about that briefly. Okay. Potentially understated versus overstated. That's what we're looking for, to make sure your cost is adequately reported for all purposes, funding particularly. Okay. Opinion expressed on the financial statements in a report format. All right? In these categories: work performed, assessment of risk, testing, reviewing, and financial statement presentation. Right on. And this risk element is a risk element from the auditor's perspective, dealing with probably 2 elements of risk. We'll be dealing with probably about 7 or 8 elements of risk later on in the breakout session. Okay? Audit opinion: whether in all material respects the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with prescribed standards. And again, when you're dealing with notes, you can bump it up a bit, right? Good. And auditor's report and management letter with recommendations on findings. And it's key to make sure, again, we're repeating myself again, that you see it, you can respond to it, and know that it's not a wish list, it's something that's attainable in your organization. Very important. Oh. I love this. Disclaimer or denial of opinion. Qualified, limited, discrepancy, existence are identified, unqualified, considered accurate, and you see the smiling faces. Audit opinions. Now, isn't this de-geeking it? Right? Super de-geeking it. That's something they can use to express. You know, the sad face, oh, I'm okay. The qualified, but maybe not that bad. But the unqualified, that's where you want to be. You want to be at the smiling face. Really important. Okay? Additional audit report paragraph, just to be aware of this. You know, if there's other matters that need to be disclosed, okay, the auditor may take more steps in dealing with your statements and putting new notes, because the format, as you realize this year, the format of your audit report has changed, and it's a little bit more involved, more explanatory, etc. Things that we've been talking about a number of years. Things that generally would appear in your management letter or audit findings report that now found their way into the audit report. For clarification, that's the whole purpose of it, okay? For clarification to the readers. Internal audit work, timing of field work visits, interim audit work, I should say, okay? Interim audit work plan. Hey, what are we going to do in the interim audit? Well, first of all, your records have to be updated so they can be looked at. At that point in time, if you got some issues, you have changeover in your staff, etc. that have happened, you're not sure what's happened, hey, maybe it's time to do an interim, and in the interim, you can look after a lot of issues before the deadline comes up. Plus the fact the auditor's got more time. He or she is not spent with the March 31st deadline and doing everything between April, May, June, and July, and sometimes August, and sometimes September. But we won't be there because we'll be on holidays, right? And our statements will be in on time. So that magical date of July, it's done, all right? Over and over again. If records are not up to date, your auditor will generally attend to these matters during the year-end field visit. Really important. So you can actually set up the work to be done at the end of the year. And a lot of it can be done earlier. They can do the bank recs earlier. They can do a lot of the things and get a consensus of where your inventories are at that point in time. And also review your notes from your quarterly meetings that went up to the date of their interim report or your monthly meetings, okay? So those standards are really important and can be used. Okay? Getting ready for your audit. Yeah, it's a track meet, for sure. Okay? It really is. And those are the lanes. Audit plan. The auditor's plan will generally include, we talked about this, identifying the organizational change. Very, very important, because we can determine who and how the controls are going to be looked after and spent. Okay? Addressing regulatory changes. We do have changes, and your funding may have changes. We talked about SET being different, all right? That's one change for you. You may be placing other reports that are going to be an issue. Determining materiality levels, very, very important. You can assist in the materiality levels. You can talk to your auditors and say, you know, I have concerns. We've had some changes in this area. We want to have you look at more in detail one particular section of our office accounting records. And they can do that. And you assist them, because then they're sitting back and oh, wow, this is kind of cool. They're telling us our concerns. They're here every day, and they're saying, let's look at this. Okay, that's fine. So you can work with your auditors and break down those barriers. So you work on accomplishing the same thing. Statements that are not qualified. Assessment of financial reporting risks identified during your previous audit. So if you had risks, you're working on that. Taking steps. Even if it means, yeah, we haven't had time to do it, but it's in the back of our minds. Yes, you're attempting to resolve that issue. Get something down in writing, because we really like stuff in writing, right? As auditors, we really do. Okay? Timing of audits, including estimates or budgeted fee. That's really, really important. So if you're seeing your audit fees going up, you sit back, if you're on an audit or finance committee, sit back and say, why are our fees going up? What has happened? And we talked about looking at a journal entries. If your journal entries skyrocket from 20 to 5 to 50 to 80,